Hi, my name's Ollie. I'm starting a new series on YouTube called The Watch Collector. I've been collecting watches for around 15 years now, and really what I wanted to do is share my journey from the more established brands through to the more independent, less well-known brands, to explore what I've gone through and hopefully inspire and enjoy your collections as well. This being the first episode, I've got a very good friend of mine, Pietro, who's from the limited edition, and he's actually been instrumental in me exploring the more independent brands over the last few years. Pietro, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Ollie. It's a great pleasure, and it's been a journey, of course, and it's been great to be friends over the last few years. We've shared some great moments, all related to watchmaking. And on that very point, what are we wearing today? What are you wearing today? I'm really curious.
So today, Pietro, I'm wearing the first Patek that I ever bought, and that's the Nautilus 5726A. What have you got on?
Beautiful. I have a Schwarz Etienne 4K Voutilainen, limited edition, terracotta, and it's a version of the Roma Synergy that we launched exclusively with Schwarz Etienne.
I think that probably shows the perfect relationship between what we want to discuss. And really that's sort of the journey from the much more mainstream, which is obviously what I'm wearing, to the much more idiosyncratic and less well known, but no less appreciated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Patek Philippe have been shown the way to so many. It's of course still an independent brand, and probably the one that has nailed it, in an incredible way, more than anyone else historically to this point. I truly believe that without names such as Patek Philippe, I don't even know if such a category of independent watchmakers would even be here to talk about and to enjoy like we are doing. And watchmaking is such an amazing hobby and such an amazing form of art to be relating to, to be passionate about. And everyone has his own journey in watchmaking, and it's very interesting how, for example, our journeys are so similar these days in a way, but so different in general. So where did you start? Where did your passion for watchmaking actually start? Is there a day that you could point out in the diary, or did it happen as a gradual thing?
Honestly, Pietro, I think probably like millions around the globe. When I was 13 or 14 and I watched GoldenEye, and it was Pierce Brosnan wearing his Omega 300, and that was it. That was the first watch that I wanted from then on. And as mainstream and as cliched as it sounds, that's absolutely true. And so that was the very first one that I ever had. What about you? What started yours?
Yes, interestingly for me, is another cliche. It all came from my dad, because I didn't think about watches, and let alone mechanical watches, until the age of 15, 16, when my dad, he had one of the best days in his life. He came back home with two watches, a Girard-Perregaux for himself and a Breitling for me. In those days, Breitling was very much a rising, independent watchmaker. I'm talking about the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, and that's where it all started. Yeah, and it has developed across the years. Wow.
We'll over this series we'll explore a little bit more about the limited edition, and we're going to look at some pieces specifically from it, because as a business it does have access to some incredible pieces. But if you don't mind me asking, what led you on the journey to starting the limited edition?
Well, the limited edition was a vision that we had when I was serving my time to work for some brands in the past. I started with the big groups to then move to the more independent watchmakers. And I saw that there wasn't any space at that time, I'm talking 15 years ago, 10 years ago, in the high street for the independent watchmakers. Yet I did know that a lot of people around the world, being in love with this form of art, would collect independent watchmakers as much as they were collecting any other famous brand on the high street. So I was lucky enough to meet a friend that wanted to invest in the idea of promoting independent watchmakers as a form of art online. Because we're talking 2014, 2015 when we started, online was still very much a place where people were looking at to just get a bargain or a good buy or something related to what they would pay for a watch. But it was not really utilized for what I thought the big potential was of creating the knowledge, creating the culture, creating a community around independent watchmakers in particular. So that's what we did, and 7 years down the line, we are now I would say, one of the most complete guides on independent watchmaking. We embrace the brands as well as the solo watchmakers with no distinction. The only curation is about the watchmakers that we think are interesting for the crowd of collectors that we now are proudly serving around the world, over 1,000 collectors these days. So independent watchmaking has become my life, my mission in a way of nurturing a passion and creating a business around this passion. For you as a collector, when did you get exposed to the independent, more niche watchmakers?
Around 5 or so years or so ago, and specifically 2 watches. One was the Constantin Chaikin Joker, and the second was HYT Skull, 51mm. With the Joker, actually, it was a friend of mine who had already identified it. I hadn't seen it, and he forwarded it to me, as with so many people who share passion of watch collecting through a group on WhatsApp. And I just thought it was amazing. And he said, I've already been in contact with this guy Pietro. He seems really cool,
random guy, yeah.
and he might be able to help. I think I'm going to go for it. And I said, well, I think it looks superb. I'll join you, which is exactly what we did. So actually, it was not just him and me, but it was also a third. And we all put our deposits down, and a year later, the Joker arrived. And it was around the same sort of time that I saw a piece about the HYT Skull. I'd never heard of HYT before. I certainly never heard of any liquid in any watches. And at that time, I was in a particular sort of part of my watch collecting career, shall we say, where I thought to myself, I desperately needed black titanium with green in it. Yeah. Why? Who knows? But our brains work in all sorts of different ways.
There's always a day in your life where you...
There's always a day in life when you think you need a watch that's got those colours and those materials. And I saw it, and I think I messaged you or emailed you and asked you if there's something you could help with. And you messaged back to say, yes, you think you could. And around 6 months later, we had the conversation, and you had one, and we met, and that was it. Fell in love with it and bought it. So it was really out of surprise when you see those 2 particular pieces that really got me into thinking, well, I love your more established brands, but maybe this is something that I should be exploring as well.
Absolutely. And from there, so many stories have started to happen, because we didn't quite made it to Russia to visit Constantin Chaikin, but we made it to Switzerland to visit HYT, and we visited Parmigiani together. All stories that I guess will be on your channel on the way to come. All
stories on the channel, and very much looking forward to sharing them with our hopefully a broadening fan base as they explore our journey, my journey, and hopefully get to share some of their stories as well.
Fantastic.